Assalamualaikum everyone. I'm Muqaddas Education Wali and I'm a student in Enhanced School Foundation course Batch 2. Today I will be interviewing Maya on the question based on what the backbone of early civilization. So let's get started.
Hey there.
Hi, so I'm going to ask you a question based on what the early civilization. Can I start?
Absolutely. Go ahead. I'm ready when you are.
Why was wood one of the most important natural resources for early humans?
Wood was huge for early humans, honestly. Like picture building shelter from scratch. Wood gave them structures that weren't just piles of leaves. They could make tools for hunting, fishing, digging, pretty much anything survival related. And of course, fire. Wood fueled the first fires that kept them warm, cooked food, and kept predators away. It really was the foundation for a lot of their daily life.
So, how did early people discover different uses of wood?
Probably wasn't a eureka moment, more like slow experimentation. At first, wood was just there. They'd pick up branches for defense or to dig stuff. Then they noticed some branches were harder than others, maybe better for hitting things. Over time, we're talking generations. They'd figure out which wood split cleanly, which held fire the longest, which bent well. Trial and error, basically, plus probably watching animals. A bird building a nest isn't that different from figuring out shelter construction.
What properties of wood made it useful for survival?
Strength was a big one. You need something that can withstand impact for tools and weapons. But wood is also relatively lightweight compared to stone, so easier to carry around. Different types have different flexibilities, which was huge for things like bows or traps. Plus, it burns, giving heat and light. It's just versatile. And the fact that it was readily available in most places helped a lot. They didn't need to mine or smelt anything like they did with metals later on.
So, how did early forests influence where early civilization settled?
Forests pretty much dictated settlement patterns at first. Early people needed access to wood for everything we just talked about, so they tended to cluster around forested areas. Dense forests also offered some protection, shelter from weather, and a natural barrier against predators or other tribes. River valleys with forests combined? Jackpot. Water plus wood equaled everything they needed to survive and establish some stability.
How was wood used to build early homes and shelters?
Early homes were pretty basic. Think lean tos or simple huts. They'd lean branches against each other to form a frame, then cover it with leaves, mud, animal skins, whatever they had nearby. Over time, they got more sophisticated, learning to stack logs for walls, maybe lash them together with vines. Later, they'd learn to build more solid timber framed structures, think basic cabins or even the foundations for more permanent settlements. Wood was the backbone of pretty much every early dwelling design.
Why was wood important for making tools and weapons?
Without wood, early tools were mostly stone, which is good for chopping, but not for crafting anything delicate. Wood was key for tools that needed shape or flexibility. Think spears, a stone point lash to a wooden shaft, digging sticks for foraging, wooden clubs. And then when they figured out how to shape wood with controlled fire or stone tools themselves, you get things like bows, handles for axes, all kinds of game-changing tools that stone just couldn't provide. It's what let them upgrade from simple survival to actually shaping their environment.
So, how did wooden farming tools help agriculture develop?
Big time. You needed better tools to actually start farming versus just foraging. Simple digging sticks became plows to turn over soil. Sharpened wooden blades were used for harvesting crops. Once they learned woodworking, they could make yokes for oxen or draft animals, making farm work way more efficient. It wasn't just tools, though. Wood was used to build irrigation systems, fences to protect crops, even storage structures to keep harvests safe from animals or rot. Farming really wouldn't have taken off without wood as a foundation.
What role did wood play in cooking and heating?
Wood's role in cooking was massive. Fire from wood allowed them to cook food, huge for improving nutrition and making some foods edible at all. Roasting meat over wood, boiling water in wood containers. It opened up a lot more dietary options. In heating, essential for survival in colder climates. It let people expand into areas they couldn't have lived in before, offering comfort and protection from the elements. Not to mention, those cooking fires likely also acted as a gathering place to foster social connections.
So, how did wooden boats change transportation and trade?
Massively. Before boats, transport relied on what people could carry or beasts of burden, limited reach. Wooden boats, even simple dugout canoes, let them explore coastal areas, fish more effectively, and then, critically, start trading. They could move goods further, discover new settlements, make wider social connections. Larger wooden boats eventually led to sea trade networks, spreading goods, ideas, and culture much faster than ever before. Without wood, expansion and trade stay very local.
How did wood contribute to the growth of villages and cities?
Trade networks fueled growth directly. Easier transport meant they could trade surplus for resources they lacked: food, materials, skilled labor. Cities especially benefited from that steady flow of goods. Plus, wood meant safer transport because boats were more weather resistant and could carry more. More trade attracted more people, which meant settlements got bigger. Then they needed more infrastructure, leading to craft specialization and growth in all directions. Yeah. Basically, wood enabled the surplus and logistics that make complex society even possible.
Why were wooden structures common before stone buildings?
Stone buildings are massively labor intensive. You need to quarry, transport, cut, and precisely fit stone. That's like next level engineering. Wood, it grows on trees, it's relatively lightweight, and you can shape it with simpler tools. So, wood was the practical choice for most building needs for most of human history. Stone was reserved for monuments, temples, or defenses where the cost in labor or permanence was worth it. Basically, wood was the practical, fast, and easy choice.
How did woodworking skills become specialized jobs?
Well, at first, everyone probably cobbled together their own basics: a frame here, a tool handle there. But some people inevitably got better, faster at shaping wood. Someone figured out how to make sharper tools. Someone else mastered bending techniques. Another specialized in boat building. Because this skill required knowledge, which types of wood work best, how to treat them to last longer, it naturally became specialized. Like, who would trust their shelter to someone who doesn't know which woods rot fastest? This leads to carpenters, boat builders, tool makers, specialists who earned resources from their skills and knowledge.
What type of professions depend on wood in early societies?
Early professions were pretty directly tied to survival. You had flint knappers who crafted stone tools, hunters providing food, gatherers finding edible plants and materials for clothing. Then, as woodworking became more skilled, carpenters building homes and furniture, boatwrights crafting watercraft for fishing and trade. With settlements growing, you'd have potters creating storage vessels, weavers making clothing, all pretty grounded in fundamental needs. The more specialized society got, the more jobs emerged, each depending on those base survival skills like food production or shelter.
So, how is wood used in art, cravings, and religious objects?
Wood was fundamental in art, especially early on. They carved figures and masks for religious ceremonies using different wood types to show rank or gods. The very act of carving wood into a sacred object required dedication and skill. Honoring the wood itself almost became spiritual. Also, wood was essential for making musical instruments, drums, flutes, which had religious importance. These weren't just decorations. The objects held symbolic power and connected communities to their beliefs. The natural patterns of wood probably added another layer of meaning too, like sacred symbols in the grain itself.
How did wood influence cultural traditions and craftsmanship?
Huge influence. Different regions had different wood types, so craft traditions varied. Mm. In forest rich areas, carving and boat building thrived. Drier regions, wood became more precious, so crafting styles might have been simpler, focused on durability. Rituals around wood, choosing the right tree, honoring the spirit of the wood, developed in some cultures. It shaped how people viewed nature too, not just as raw material, but as sacred or holding spirit. Skilled woodworking essentially became both an art form and a way to show cultural identity.
Why did different civilizations use different type of woods?
It was totally geographical. Just use what you have. Mediterranean civilizations used olive wood or cedar, while those in dense forests like northern Europe used oak or beech. Also, wood's properties differ wildly. Dense hardwoods work best for tools, but softwoods are easier to carve. So, culture plus available resources decided what civilizations became masters of using. Early tech was pretty adaptive based on what worked best locally. No point inventing advanced woodworking if your forest only grows flimsy trees.
What problems occurred when forests were overused?
Deforestation happened way earlier than most people realize. Ancient civilizations chopped down forests for fuel, building materials, ship production, clearing land for agriculture. The same things we grapple with today, honestly. Overuse led to soil erosion, flooding without tree roots to hold ground, habitats vanishing. It could weaken civilizations too, lacking materials, needing to import them, putting trade at risk, or making societies unstable. Some ancient collapses, researchers think, were tied to ecological breakdown due to deforestation. It wasn't always understood at the time. Forests seemed endless, but the patterns were repeating.
So, how did early societies manage to protect forests?
It wasn't common, but some did. Ancient Greece had laws protecting certain forests from excessive logging. Different societies designated sacred groves where harvesting was restricted, both spiritual reverence and resource management intertwined. Often, forest management wasn't a matter of conservation as we think of it today, but keeping wood available for important needs, like naval power. Communities sometimes worked together to replant or monitor usage. It was the difference between lasting security and exhausting local resources. It really depends on how forward thinking each civilization was.
What happened when civilizations ran out of nearby wood resources?
That's when you saw major shifts, trade intensified, people, moved elsewhere to find what they needed, or conflicts broke out. Egypt needed cedar from Lebanon for religious structures, so they had to import and control the trade routes. Rome needed wood for ships and cities, but once they exploited nearby forests, they started reaching into other territories for materials. When resources ran out, trade networks became power struggles over who controlled those resources. It's a pattern as old as civilization. Scarcity and the demand for essentials like wood, water, and food drive expansion and competition.
How did early civilization be different without wood?
Incredible difference. Shelters were limited to caves or temporary structures made from whatever happened to be available. Tools stayed rudimentary and stone based, slowing down any real development or farming. Transportation would have been severely restricted, limiting trade and cultural exchange. Building complex structures or settling in colder climates probably wouldn't have happened at all. Cities would have stayed much smaller and scattered, expansion limited severely. Wood wasn't just a resource, it enabled entire lifestyles that otherwise would have been impossible.
Which invention made from wood do you think was the most important and why?
That's tough, but I'd have to say the sailing boat. Think about it. Before that, humans were largely tied to shorelines. A wooden boat meant exploration, trade, settlement of islands, connection between distant communities, even warfare changed because of it. It wasn't just transport, it was the key to spreading ideas, cultures, technologies, genes, even across vast distances. So, yeah, the wooden sailing boat, biggest game changer by far.
How is wood still important in daily life today?
Everything, honestly. The homes we live in, whether it's timber framing or furniture, most buildings use wood in some capacity. Wood products are still essential for paper, construction materials, even textiles. Modern ships still have wooden components despite being metal based. And think about musical instruments, art. Wood is at the heart of that. Even our connection to nature, parks, forests, hiking. We value those spaces that provide the very resource that built civilization. It's so deeply embedded in our culture and technology, we barely notice it anymore.
So, what modern materials have replaced wood in some uses?
Well, metal and concrete pretty much took over building where longevity and scale mattered. Structures last longer and can get bigger that way. Plastics and synthetic materials replaced wood in furniture and some tools, often cheaper, durable, sometimes more weather resistant. We still use wood, of course, but it's often more decorative or for specialist uses like instruments or high end building, rather than being the go to material it once was. It's kind of like wood went from being the default to being a specialized or luxury option in many areas.
Is wood a renewable resource? Explain your answer.
Yes, wood is renewable, but it's more nuanced than that. A forest can regrow trees, that's the renewal part, but it's not automatic. If you cut down trees without replanting or cut faster than the forest can recover, you cause deforestation. Sustainable forestry practices, managed replanting, selective cutting mean the renewable part actually works. So, wood can be sustainable if forests are treated responsibly, but it's not a guaranteed, always renewable resource. We have to manage it to stay that way.
So, what lessons about sustainability can we learn from early civilizations' use of wood?
Biggest lesson is that resources aren't limitless, even if they appear that way. Early civilizations that depleted local forests suffered, trade became harder, settlements declined. So there's that classic warning about overuse. But it also shows there's wisdom in some ancient practices, sacred groves, managed forests, knowing local species. We can see what worked: responsible harvesting, understanding regrowth cycles, and see what didn't work: unchecked deforestation, short sighted resource use. The irony? They understood dependency on natural limits better than some modern mindsets that treat resources like they'll never end.
Okay, so thank you so much for answering my questions. Bye.
You're so welcome, Okadas. This was a really fascinating conversation about wood and early civilizations. Take care, and thanks for all the thoughtful questions. Bye.